Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Super excited to be here and be a part of Global Skills Day 21. We're going to just go ahead and get started right away so that we can use every ounce of our time. I'm Elyse Klaidman, and I'm going to be your moderator today. I am the CEO and founder of X in a Box, and I'm going to pass it over to Dennis. Let's all just do a quick intro. And if you have some thoughts that you want to share quickly about the title of this event, Future of Learning, Future of Work, love to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Elyse. My name is Dennis Henderson. I am the Executive Director of Manchester Youth Development Center, formerly the Deputy CEO. As of about 2 months ago, I was the Deputy CEO of Manchester Academic Charter School, which I was an educator there for the past 20 years. And in regards to the title of this, in a word to summarize it, liberating.
Let's go to Anthony.
Hi, my name is Anthony. I'm currently a third year studying at USC's Ivy and Young Academy, and I'm here with X in the Box as an intern for the summer. And I'm overall really excited to be a part of this panel, and overall really excited about the education that is to come, and along the stuff that we are currently working on at X in the Box.
Yeah, Anthony's not just an intern for the summer, but he's one of our educational advisors and has been part of the team since almost day one. Let's pass it on to Steve.
Hey, everybody. My name is Steve Isaacs. I am the education program manager at Epic Games. And prior to starting at Epic, which was just a few months ago in February, I was a teacher, a classroom teacher for 28 years and taught game design and development in a middle and high school. So the title resonates so well with me in terms of, I feel like I like to think we're kind of here or there, the future is kind of here. And some of the work that I think we're doing will show that, but it's always been about sort of, in my field anyway, preparing kids for the supposed jobs that didn't necessarily exist yet. So, definitely a great topic.
So, yeah, this session is called Where Education Meets the Real World. And, we're at X in a Box and I think at Epic Games, we're all about igniting the passions and really jumpstarting students' futures, making sure that all students have that opportunity to even know what the careers of today and tomorrow are. And, we're trying to disrupt the educational model a little bit and equip our young people for really as prosperous a future as possible. Ultimately creating economic opportunity for all as well. So I just want to take a couple of minutes and frame this conversation. So my background is as an artist and also as an educator. My first jobs were all in education. I ended up at Pixar, where I was the director of Pixar University. And one of the most exciting things that I got to do at Pixar was create Pixar in a Box and Imagineering in a Box with amazing support from the Walt Disney Company and from Pixar. And through that model, really started thinking about how the future of work and the future of learning are inextricably tied. And so if we can create innovative content that we can put in the hands of students and educators. And by we, I mean corporations working hand in hand with educators and those who are able to put the content out into the world. So if we think for a minute about a couple of things, we all know the technology in this world is going so extraordinarily fast. We have no idea what the tech of tomorrow is, let alone the jobs of tomorrow. And so we know that the current curricula, current kind of K through 12 schools are out of step with today's industries. It's almost impossible to stay in step with them. So that's one thing. Another thing is inequity, right? The traditional systems that we have are failing the majority of students. The students who are succeeding in the workplace, those are students who can leverage connections, tutors, extracurricular programs. We are widening the already massive chasmic socioeconomic divide. So that's got to change. And how do we do that? And then the third point to frame, and then I'm going to hand it over, is organizations, right? Organizations are going to be contending with a lack of talent, in particular, lack of diverse talent, if we don't take responsibility and figure out how we are going to make sure all students not only have opportunities, but are aware of what opportunities there are and are starting to actually create content, make things. So what I'd like, maybe we can start, Steve, by you talking a little bit about the actual project that all of us on this call, on this panel, are working on as an example of the kind of work we're trying to do.
Sure thing. So, it was very exciting. When I started, we were actually probably just launching or very close to launching the first installment of Unreal Futures, which is Unreal Futures Careers in Advertising. But the Unreal Futures program is all about sort of raising both awareness and skills in terms of the careers that are, in our case, utilize, say, interactive 3D and real-time media. And it's amazing to see all of these different industries. And I think what's especially great about this project is that it does a couple of things. One is it exposes kids to experts in these industries and really gives them sort of a behind the scenes look. So for like the advertising course, kids get to see the exciting work happening through an advertising firm called Media Monks. And then they go on to learn about the industry, but really from that firsthand, kind of account, and then go on to, do a hands-on, activity, in our case, using Unreal Engine to create an advertisement. So in the Unreal Futures Careers in Advertising course, kids recreate an Oreo cookie ad. And it's pretty remarkable to see, kind of what happens, like we see the final ad typically, right? And I think that's what kids are exposed to, and we can imagine what that's like. But in this case, kids are actually creating that and then being able to modify it and use those skills in other ways. But they learn really neat things. Like they learn that, hey, I'll give you a little bit of a teaser here, but I think there are 88 flavors of Oreos. And when they create different advertisements to showcase different ones, in the past, they would have to, do a whole new filming for each one. And now they take one wrapper out, one packaging out, put a new packaging in, and they have the new advertisement. So I think it's really neat for kids to see that. We did something really neat with that too, is we followed that up when it was launched with a opportunity for kids to create an Earth Day awareness advertisement. So basically what we allowed them to do is we said, hey, here are the skills you're going to need to do to get a taste of like virtual production and advertising using Unreal Engine. And now take those skills and actually apply them to another project, which I think is so important to reinforce what they're learning. So basically that was, that's the first one, but we have a whole series of Unreal Futures projects coming up. The one we're working on currently is Unreal Futures Careers in Fashion. And we're super excited that we are allowed to announce that the one that's going to follow that is Careers in Virtual Production. So it's a really neat array of opportunities kids are going to have to learn both about these industries and see how they can, take these skills and become marketable. And as Elyse was saying, kind of enter the job force and actually be, have some of the skills required to take on these roles.
Yeah, what's so incredible about Unreal Engine, which I knew almost nothing about as we started this project, is that it's such an extraordinarily powerful tool, and the ability for students to learn the tool, which will allow them to be amazing for a lot of different kinds of roles. They also get to learn about a variety of career options along the way, where they may use Unreal Engine or they may not, but they're learning both at the same time.
Right.
It would be, I'd love to hear a little bit from Dennis about what you think about educators having these kinds of tools in their hands, both Unreal Engine, but really the opportunities for students to delve into how do you use Unreal Engine and why does it matter?
For educators, it takes I want to say it takes a weight off of them. You know, a lot of times educators are tasked to prepare students for careers, yet educators are limited on just their career experience, the careers they're exposed to, or their network. And as Elyse you alluded to earlier, you know, there is disparities in which people have access to knowledge. So if you don't know anyone that works for Epic Games, how can you share those experiences, or how the skills or what skills are needed to work in Epic Games? So this gives teachers a direct connection to a pipeline of a variety of different fields, which they are not the experts, but they can just be facilitators and connect their students to experts in the fields and careers in which they may be interested in. Another asset for teachers that I look at with this, especially it's a much needed asset. Just authentic assessments. We've been so driven and indoctrinated as educators that there's these standardized assessments that truly doesn't measure your preparedness for the careers. It measures how fluid you are at reading or how good you are at math, but not how it applies in the real world. So this gives educators and educational systems the opportunity to really give authentic assessments that's aligned to the needs of the industries and the markets and just the sustainability of their region. So again, it's really, again, disrupting the traditional system. And when we're looking at these new models of learning and teaching, and just the relevance. One of the big things that I've always found is the biggest as a struggle as an educator. Let me even go before that. What I found as a struggle as a student for myself, if it wasn't relevant to my life, I could care less. And that was me as a student. And as an educator, I'm always keen on looking at, is a student really into what I'm teaching? And if they're not, it's not that they don't care, but it must not be relevant to them. So how can I make this relevant? And that's a struggle for educators to try to make concepts relevant. And this provides a platform of a plethora of different opportunities to demonstrate why academics are relevant. So again, there's so many different levels here that really supports educators. And the biggest thing, and I'm gonna go back to this again, is the equity. I've been teaching for over 20 years. I'm not bragging, but I think I'm great with kids. I think I'm a great educator, but I only know what I know. And just through the work of working with X in a Box, I had no idea of what Unreal Engine was until I started working with Unreal Engine. And then to know that this is something that is accessible. Like it's accessible. If you got the internet and a computer, you can access this. However, if you don't know, you don't know. And then, okay, you access it, but you don't know how to utilize the platform. Again, that's another divide. And this approach that we're looking at today to really disrupt and change education, this takes down those barriers in which it provides an even playing field for kids to really have opportunities to explore, learn, and develop skills that can be transferred into the real world.
Yeah, one thing that Steve didn't even mention is that Unreal Engine is completely free. All the content that we, X in a Box, create with our corporate partners is free, right? So that's a good starting point for accessibility. But then another important point is like, how do you make this interesting? How do you make it relevant? How do you make it appealing to people who might not think they know how to do this? So I'm definitely that I don't know how to do this technology thing. It scares the heck out of me. And so we make it so that if I can do it, pretty much anybody can do it. Anthony, you've been actually working on one of the Unreal projects, Unreal Futures in Fashion. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that process has been like, how X in a Box approaches things, anything you want to share that you think's relevant to the conversation?
Yeah, and I definitely want to echo a lot of Stephen and Dennis have been saying, right? First and foremost, right? Like a lot of this is like providing the tools while also providing the guidance along with it, right? Along with having like incredible knowledge is knowing how to use it as well. And so that's something that I also kept in mind very much while working with Unreal Engine and also on the fashion project. I think the unique part of what the fashion project really like shows, not only for Unreal Engine, but for tech for the future, is that this dynamic approach of using your interests and using creative capabilities to build very meaningful and very impactful products or like styles, right? And so that's one of the huge realizations I've had while working on the fashion project itself. Like, even though it was all new to me and it was like fashion, also with tech, right? Like, along with this amazing platform and this amazing team at X in the Box, I really started to understand a lot of the capabilities that tech has on really just on anything that you're really passionate about. Like, imagine a fashion designer being able to design on a software that's considered super techy and that's only like siloed into the super techy industry. Like that, to me, that speaks wonders into what other people can do with that same type of power, but for their own passions. It's like, what if it's the same thing, but for architecture? Same thing, but for car design, right? It's like the possibilities are really endless. And I think that's what truly the Unreal project for fashion is really like showing me right now. And along with that, right, like me as a student, right, it really gives me a lot of like inspiration along with a lot of passion of being able to like think about my own situation along with this process and really just be understanding of the whole situation and understanding what's my part in this, right? Like, how can I contribute and how can I utilize my own passions into this project as well? And I think the fashion step is like a huge, like, general great direction that we're doing.
If I could, I'm glad that the word passion keeps coming up, because that's one of the things that drove me as an educator was to find, I always thought my mission was to find and nurture, students' passion. I felt like when I could accomplish that, that was where we were hitting on something. Both Anthony and Dennis also talked about the importance of the relevance. When something is meaningful to kids, that's when they go far above and beyond. So one of the things I really appreciate that we're able to do, Elyse was saying too, if she could do it, and I kind of feel the same way if I could do it. But the neat thing is Unreal Engine is huge and there's so much you can do. But what we're trying to do is sort of soften that learning curve and say, hey, especially with this advertising project, we're showcasing a very small piece of Unreal Engine, but enough that kids can do a very exciting and meaningful project with it. And, so in the case of I think they all have fun doing the recreating the Oreo ad. But when you extend that and say, let's take this into a meaningful area for you, take those skills and, apply it. That's one thing. And as kids then start saying, wait, so I know how to use the camera, I know how to animate it, and I know how to use the lighting. Well, what if I now want to, have a character move around and do this in Unreal Engine? It's like, as they develop a project that's meaningful to them, then that learning just, perpetuates. But what we're trying to do is kind of break them into like, hey, you can get started in a way that's, like Dennis said, sort of unintimidating to the teacher. In fact, and I'll even show, I'll screen share it and show what the Unreal Futures course looks like. But the beauty of it is that it's, very appropriate for teachers to do with students, but it's also essentially created in a way that's kind of self-guided. So a student that's going through it is, viewing the videos, then viewing the tutorials and using Unreal Engine while they're viewing the tutorials. So the teacher's role kind of becomes one of not being like, oh my gosh, I have to be the expert and know Unreal Engine, but rather let me guide this process. Let me provide, the resources and the support, and let me, maybe think about what the extension activities could be. But I think it's really important that people know that because it otherwise can seem kind of daunting. But let me just, if I could bring that up real quick, I just think it's neat for people to see.
Yeah, while you bring that up, I'll just add on to that. And that's a great segue into, the way we start almost all projects is from the perspective of what is the student going to do? We all learn by doing. And so part of that learning by doing is making mistakes, iterating, problem solving, collaborating, communicating, right? All of the skills, along with the hard skills of learning how to use Unreal Engine are the equally important skills of the 21st century, and not just 21st century, they're kind of forever skills in how do we solve problems, how do we think critically, how do we work together. And so we always start, everything we do is project-based. What is the student going to do? Anthony and Dennis, do you want to maybe add on to that a little bit of the what's our approach to, what's X in a Box's approach to creating content?
I love X in the Box approach to creating content because it is really about that end product, and we think big. That's what I love about it. And when I say that we think big, we're not afraid, we're not watering down what this product will look like for the students or what the task is the students have. That end product is something that is tangible, that can be put into a portfolio for colleges, for jobs. So we think big on what students can do. And then as we start to whittle down, what are those essential points to get to that? Then we start looking at, who do we need to talk to? Who is it that we need to interview? What type of questions do we ask of the experts in the field? And then as we start to unpack and have those conversations with the experts in the field, we discover some things that we didn't have in mind, various processes or just the way, the perception that they approach it. It's just our whole dynamic of what we assume what people do. It's a whole nother process. So we're looking at the end, and as we start going back and putting it together, we learn so much along the way. It really becomes truly an authentic experience that is extremely dynamic, because as the kids go through this journey and they're learning from experts at these different intersects of the process, it's almost like a new experience every time when you're hearing a different perspective from different experts along the way. So again, it's pretty awesome to have be 13, 14 years old, and you have virtual mentors working with Epic that's guiding you along the way, and they're talking to you in these bite-sized pieces, yet with the concepts on the level and the language on the level that they use within the industry. So it's fun. The process is messy. It is extremely messy, but it's awesome once we're done with it, and it's so clear and concise.
That's a really interesting perspective, and I really want to articulate a lot more of what you mean by the larger concept, right? A lot of how I've been seeing a lot of the work that we do in X in a Box is, how can we provide a platform for students, right? We don't necessarily have a specific career in mind or a specific hyper niche area, right? We always like to focus on, well, what's the place that can provide the most opportunity, right? And even thinking back to even currently right now with the Epic project, right? We're looking at how to build fashion, right? Or build the perception of how to really be creative with the tool, right? In previous ones, right? Even in Array 101, right? That could have been the same career, but with data engineering and data architecture, right? So there's a lot of these concepts of, well, what is the best centerpiece that we can help focus on to allow other students to really innovate on the thing and just to discover their own new passion from it. I think and that was a lot of discussion that we've always been having, is well, what can provide the most, what is the entry point that we can focus on that can allow more students and more even teachers alike to teach this type of things while also being able to build onto it as a new front, right? We're not looking for specific designers, we're not looking for specific coders. What we are looking for is for those people who are willing to learn and who are always willing to just explore new ideas. And that's something that we really emphasize here in X in a Box as well, which is always super exciting.
And I just want to piggyback off of Anthony on something that I love. This is probably my favorite part of X in a Box as far as the process. When I first started with X in a Box, it was me and a bunch of people around my age. As we start working with the student advisors, and this was early on, you just see this, it becomes this dynamic process in which you have these different perspectives and approaches, and these various levels of expertise and even culture. There's just different cultures within the ages. So when you bring all this together, it really, to watch how the projects evolve And by the time it's done, you really have so much input along the way. I mean, it's amazing. Right now, we're doing another project. I want to say some of our youngest people within something that we're testing out right now is around 13 years old, and sending meetings with them today just to hear their perspectives on things. Every perspective is valuable. I mean, they dropped some jewels for us today, and it's just amazing to see how you get all this input to put together these projects, and you see it in result of how engaging they are.
Yeah, we have a group of 6 student advisors who are embedded in our team and everything we do. We don't do anything without them being a part of the conversation, and a group of 10 educator advisors. And then we now have a group of beta testers for some of the work we're doing. And like Dennis says, I mean, every day my eyes are open to something like, of course I wouldn't think of that. That's not my background. That's my perspective. That's not my whatever. You know, it's like we just need as many perspectives as possible in the conversation. One of the things I want to kind of jump to and open up broad conversation is, what do we all think about why companies, why big brands need to be involved and concerned with education? And are they? You know, we know Epic is certainly involved. We have the support of the Walt Disney Company when we were doing Pixar in a Box, Imagineering in a Box, but it's not typical that people understand exactly why. What do you, you know, and this goes back to, what does the future of learning and the future of work have to do with each other?
If I could, you know, so it's interesting because, you know, I've been involved with a number of ed tech companies over the years. I mean, as an educator, it was always important to me to be involved because, as you're pointing out, Elyse, I mean, I knew what I wanted, the impact I wanted to have on a product that I was using with my students. And fortunately, I learned that a number of companies actually value that, which is great. Some, you know, some more than others, certainly. And then when I actually was still in the classroom and I noticed that Epic, through their mega grant program, one of the tracks that they were offering, you know, significant grant funding for was education, which you don't see all that often. And especially it's great. Epic is known as a big game development company, you know, first and foremost, right? And so it was really exciting to me to see that investment that they had, and the fact that you know how it's pretty cool for me that my position is now education program manager at Epic Games. You know, so the beauty there is that we value education, and that goes all the way to the top. You know, Tim Sweeney, our CEO, is very supportive of the education initiatives. But to your question, I mean, it's, you know, one is it's an investment in our youth and the future. You know, that's, you know, certainly true. But furthermore, if we support and teach kids these industry standard skills, we're helping to prepare the workforce. And, you know, quite honestly, many of them will then come out using and continuing to use these tools, right? So, you know, that's it's sort of like it goes both ways. There's definitely a, you know, philanthropic, you know, education, let's support education. And there's also the, hey, let's really get people using, and to go even a step further, one of the things that I think is so neat about the Epic products is that the innovation comes out of the creativity of the users. So as we've seen, and this is where Unreal Futures probably was born out of, as people in different industries started using this tool, Unreal Engine, to really revolutionize their industry, right? I mean, we're the ones, we're now sharing that, like, look at how it's being used in advertising, look at how it's being used in fashion. And if we put these tools in the hands of kids who end up often doing things that surprise us, and that was always my case in the classroom, we're allowing for innovation to just, you know, continue at that level, which I think is crucial, because we don't always, you know, you said it, Elyse, from the points of view you get from kids. There's a lot there, right? So, I mean, I you know, I mean, I could go on and on, but I think it's really important that on a company level, that's realized. And I'm grateful that I'm at a place where it is valued and honored. And, that's what made me so happy to be able to join, the team.
So I definitely agree with all the points that Stephen brought up. And then, there's also this level of, when we look at just the social or economic side of things, we know what it is. Here in the US, there's a lot of inequities in education. And just in the funding of education, there's so many, we could go through the plethora of inequities in education. Yet, as a society, because of those inequities, we sometimes miss the fact that we are limiting our own human capital. And for companies and our economy to truly thrive, it's a must that all hands come together to start really investing within the education of our country, education of our world. When it comes down to it, we see so much talent in pockets that never get access to contribute to the greater economy through the skills that they possess. If we looked at things on just an economic level, I always sit up, and say, I'll see certain brands, and these brands have a market that's so untapped because they don't know how to market them, or they have styles or they have a quality of a product that's so wonderful, but yet it's not designed where it might attract another culture. Again, if you give access to a broader variety of young people to learn, and companies are engaged in helping educators know what skills are needed. And there's a big gap. Universities do not, I love universities, by the way, but schools of education, they are out of step. They do not look at the lens of education through the economy of our globe. So again, we need the companies to be right there engaged, saying this is what we need. This is how we need people to process things. And these are the skills that we see is necessary. And that investment has to be in there as well, because again, if we're beholden to the resources that are traditionally in education, we'll always be limited to what has been going on in education. So we really need the companies to help disrupt what has been going on, which has been leaving our students and our society unprepared for the opportunities that we see ahead.
That was super well spoken, Dennis. And if I could build onto that too, I think that culmination of, what does it mean to educate and what does it mean to give opportunities, ultimately what I think X in a Box really came out from, right? It's what the problem was a lot of these companies do have an interest in helping education. It's who wouldn't? If you go to a random person on the street, right? You'd be do you want to help education? It's well, yeah. And be okay, well, do you know how? It's well, I don't know how, right? But I have a certain set of skills and certain set of knowledge that I have, but it's not necessarily framed in the right way that I can be able to teach someone. Well, it's well, now, okay, well, X in a Box is that kind of entity where these companies can go to us, right? And we kind of condense these sets of knowledge, right? So essentially it's the future of education goes along with, yes, a lot of these tech companies do want to help education. It's just that they may not have the type of facets or abilities of framing to actually conduct this type of educative space, this open opportunity space, right? And so that's where a lot of companies like X in a Box come in, right? And that's why I really love this space as well, right? Simply because we do provide a lot of reference and a lot of opportunity for these companies to just really provide impact in their own meaningful way with our own with our own expertise and our own knowledge as well. And so I think that's the true beauty of education and tech coming together, right? It's instead of these kids going at a computer science room and just coding and tapping their keyboards away, it's they're actually being able to get into these spaces and actually learn firsthand and to really understand just the industry as a whole.
And you make a great point too, because I'm sorry, real quick, because our relationship with X in a Box, you're right. It's we know what we want to convey, and X in the Box has that expertise of packaging that in a way that reaches, that audience, which is, interesting in our situation too. We have a very small education team, but we have resources to reach out to organizations like X in a Box. We also have like all of our lesson plans that we provide are created by educators. So we invest in that educator community and all, which is really valuable as well. So yeah, all, great points. It's like, let the experts do, what the experts, and which also gets into an interesting space in education, because I think we also have to leverage the expertise of our students, which tools like this allow us to do, because, we can be intimidated and hold back. But when we empower students, and like Dennis was saying, when we allow more of a diverse audience, to have access to these tools, then we start to see, how everybody can contribute in different ways.
I want to push on this a little bit and say we're talking right now about a company that is invested in education. There are a lot of companies out there who I think would do what Anthony said, which is like, well, of course we want to help education, but they're also thinking about their bottom lines, and it's really hard for them to think about the long view, right? So a lot of companies say, yes, we're really investing in the diversity of our company, and we're recruiting from HBCUs, which is absolutely great. We're recruiting at the college level. What I've always said is, at the college level, you have already narrowed the funnel so enormously that if we're not taking this longer view of educating, of starting this process of opening up opportunity and awareness of skills, collaboration, careers that exist as early as possible, then we're missing out, right? And X in a Box targets middle and high school and above, but we also create content that can be adapted and used earlier, because frankly, you should be starting as soon as possible. But what are we going to do? How are we going to help companies invest? I mean, and that's time and money and resources. How is that going to be important enough for them when they're comparing it to their bottom line and really struggling with thinking about 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now? I listened to Arnie Duncan's talk this morning, and there's not one US educational sector that's in the top 10 of this country, of this world. So we're going to lose out. We're not going to be able to find people in our own country here to fill the jobs that need to be filled.
It goes back to some of the points that was brought up earlier. We are looking, we have our eyes on the wrong thing. Leaving from traditional school and now in the out of school space, one thing, I use the word liberated for the title of this topic, but then at the same time, I feel liberated as an educator. And what I mean by this is, we really truly need that partnership to help us set new benchmarks of what education is. As long as we're looking at a standardized score of a reading score, and that's the target. As a public educator, they're looking at our scores, and if our scores aren't right, our resources are going to get the reading scores up. That's what the focus is. Yet, just because a kid may not read the King's English to the same degree as someone that's brought up in a house where formal English is native to the household, that does not mean that kid cannot do 3D graphics. That does not mean that this kid cannot create 3D worlds and create movies and design and engineer and all these other skills, but they do not have the opportunity to do that. So again, if we start looking at what is our assessments, what are our students challenged to do, and how are we measuring? When, as Elyse brought up about this, we don't have any school districts in the top of the world. I find it amazing how you will find in India, the number of engineers that come from India. They don't have the number of resources that we do in our education, but they get exposure to opportunities to be creative. I listen to my uncle. He often make reference to the fact that he knows so much more when it comes to carpentry skills than his kids. He's like, all the school and education that they have. I grew up on the farm and only went to the 3rd grade, but yet I had access to do things that they never got the skills to do. And we're at this juncture right now in which we don't really provide our students those authentic opportunities to educate or to learn. So that's really, where this marriage of companies and education is essential to the security and stability of our nation and really our globe.
Yeah, Norton in the chat made a great point. Says, the corporate connection helps to make the learning real. Students see a connection that doesn't always exist in a traditional classroom. That's true. And also, if we can get kids using the industry standard, tools, that they really can see how they can, make a difference and actually, find a role, in industry. And also I think when they identify with, like, in our case, kids know Fortnite, right? So when they think of like that they're using the tools that are used to create Fortnite, I mean, that speaks to them, right? That means something. So it's kind of neat to see, that we can, kind of nurture that.
That's interesting that you say that too, Stevie, because it's funny you mentioned Fortnite too, because the main reason why I got into like tech, like back in 2016 and involved in a nonprofit, like their first thing that they asked me was, do you want to create the next Flappy Bird? Which was like, Flappy Bird was like the huge thing at the time. And so I was just like, that was like the reference point for me, right? And that's what got me into like app development, right? And so, yeah, it is taking those relative points of like things that really interest a lot of like the youth, right? And taking that and being like, well, you can build it, right? And even so, right, I think a lot of what quarantine has taught us was just this idea of like, well, when you finish class, you turn off your Zoom, and that's it, right? Like it's like you snap back to reality, It's like, well, now, right, which is why a lot more people are becoming aware of this education discrepancy at a more like alarming rate. It's just that you're not in like this realm of school where it's just like what they teach you, right? It's like, what can you do outside of it, right? Like what do you do between those Zoom sessions, right? What do you take outside of school when you're at home, right? Now it's a lot more emphasis on like what you do at home or what you consider your passion projects, right? Like I know a lot of like even applications for a lot of like work is like, oh, what have you done in quarantine? What are passion projects you worked on, right? So there's a lot more skewering and a lot more shifting of the tide, right? Instead of like learning these preset things, it's like, well, what can you do? Like what can you work on? What things interest you? Which is like super interesting.
It is super interesting, and to think that that some kids really ran with that right during quarantine. And I used to, I loved when I was teaching. I was teaching game design, and I always loved the email I would get from a parent that was had a little bit of a negative tone because the parent was asking me why I was giving so much homework in my class, and I had to write back and say, I actually don't assign any homework. Your child actually is enjoying what they're doing and they're choosing to work in it at home. And I saw that in a lot of ways. And I saw it with the kids you didn't expect to see it with and all that. And that's what you're talking about, Anthony, is like when and that's what I think Elyse started the conversation with, igniting that passion. That's always been my sort of motto as a teacher, is if I can ignite that passion and you could then say, I want to keep doing this, that's the magic, and that's different for a lot of kids, but when we can find what that is, and it happens to fortunately often be with these cool tools that kids can do creative stuff with. So as we're building this culture of creation and creativity and empowering kids with the tools to be creative, I think we're, kind of, then they can go with it in any direction. But, it's really exciting to watch.
So we've just got about 5-6 minutes left, and I was hoping that we could just do a quick round robin and have each one of you share 1 or 2 insights, kind of what you think your top insights are, and maybe a recommendation of near-term action, something that people can actually do. Who wants to start?
I always as like a little like nugget of knowledge, I think it's like you never really know what like is really gonna like interest you, right? Like I've always like I didn't expect like meditation to be something that I was super interested in, but I was just naturally just drawn to it over time. And like some of these things like just become like out of nowhere, right? But like I think taking the time to really just like sometimes just to like look into it or to talk to other people about it and really just gauge the arena is like how I gauge passion and how I gauge passion in other people. And like in general, right? Like I think if you're just like if you're a person who's wanting to be involved, right? Something I always tell people is like, well, like there's always cool volunteering opportunities everywhere, right? I think it's just really being in that like headspace of those individuals of that you want to like reach out to is like super important. And it's happened with friends of mine who I'm currently trying to collaborate with on like new educator things at USC, right? Like she would tell me like she was trying to mentor a whole lot of kids like in South Central, around where the USC community was, and she was having a lot of difficulty. And like I resonate with that simply because I was one of those students at some point, right? I grew up in South Central, and like now like talking with her and having that perspective and me being on the other side of that spectrum, being like, well, now I've had those resources and here I am. So now it's like, how can I enhance this experience even further of mentorship, right? And so I actually hopped on a call with her yesterday, as a matter of fact, and we're like currently talking about it. So I think there's just a lot of cool opportunity of just like people and just like volunteering that can come out of it.
Okay, you've each got about a minute.
And I'll
Top
go real
insight.
quick. You know, the idea that we've been talking about disrupting education, and the best way to do that, you know, is to allow people to find something they're interested in and actually encourage that. You know, I can't speak enough to, my whole career, fortunately, has become one of me following what excites me and my passion and chasing it and learning on my own what I wanted to learn. So I guess you had asked also for what we would say as a quick thing that you can do, like, you know, right after this, you know, getting out there and learning something you're interested in online is like a no-brainer these days.
Thank you. You're muted. It had to happen once.
There we go. Now I got 10 seconds left. And I just want to say, I really want to echo Stephen. Just that learning piece. I mean, he took the words right out of my mouth. Continue to learn. And that becomes contagious. Because as you learn, that's what's exciting about being a teacher to me, because I'm a student all the time and I'm always learning. So as I'm learning, that passion and my excitement resonates. And what I find is I'm learning from the kids because they don't discover something that I didn't realize. And so again, it just becomes a circle of just sharing. So go out and learn, be a student yourself as the educator.
Amen.
Absolutely agree. And I want to reach out to the CEOs and to the heads of D&I and marketing and all the different groups within these companies. And don't just think of this as philanthropy and doing good. It is, but it's an imperative to our world's future, because if we are not harnessing the talent of all of these students who are not aware of the opportunities, we are not going to be at our best, and we are not going to be the innovative, forward-thinking, growing communities that we want to be. So it's an imperative. I want to thank all of you for being a part of this. We couldn't do what we do without all of us together. So, and thanks to Global Skills Day for bringing us all together. I threw the X in a Box website in the chat, and one question, Norton, you had asked how educators can know how it might fit in their curriculum. We try to map to standards and competencies, so you'll see a lot of that on the website, and we'll continue doing it. Keep learning. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.